welcome everybody for another video on the Finn's Crafting Corner. And today we're gonna kind of have a different kind of video. As you can see, I'm trying to figure a good way to stand here. So you want to get into this hobby, and I guess I could explain you kind of how would you go ahead and start it. And well, there's multiple ways to get into this hobby. Are you more into the video games, like you can see the Chaos Gate on the background there? There's a Warhammer Dawn of War 1 and 2, then there's a Dawn of War 3, which is not a Dawn of War game, but if you want an RTS with the 40k setting, then you know Dawn of War 3 is an option. But if you are expecting Dawn of War 3 to carry on the legacy of Dawn of War game, you can skip that game. But then you have the books. If you're into Horus Heresy, I recommend the Horus Heresy novel series, such as the I forgot the name of the book actually, but I believe it's the first trilogy. Start with that and keep going from there. It's worthwhile. I love it, especially the audiobooks of the series. But yeah, but as you can see, maybe you're more into the miniature side of things, and that's where I'm gonna come in. So, how would you get started with these things? Well, the first things first, find your local gaming store or a club, so you know some local people who might actually help you getting started. Now, the thing is that before you buy any of the miniatures, unless you just want to collect them, paint them, and etc., I would recommend you actually have a demo game. Usually the local stores have like a table set up where they have miniatures and the terrain, and you can have a demo match with the storekeeper explaining you the rules, etc. So you don't even need to buy the miniatures to try out the game. Sorry if I'm being a bit crouched, the camera is kind of low, I have a flimsy setup here, whatever. So you get to try these things before even you purchase a miniature. If you like the game, then go ahead and browse to your heart's content what they have available. There's a lot of races, there's a lot of backstory. Speaking of, if you want to get into Warhammer 40k lore, just pick a subject and go from there. The lore is incredibly vast, so it gets overwhelming most of the time, so you just pick a starting point, whatever. If you want to do some Imperium, just pick what looks interesting and go from there, because first, to explain the Imperium of Man, you start explaining what are Space Marines, and then you start explaining the Primax, and then you go to Horus Heresy and try to explain all that, and then you suddenly go all the way back to the War in Heavens, and you're talking about the whole start of the Warhammer universe. So just pick a subject, get it from there, expand slowly. I don't know anything about the Xenos races, the aliens or whatever. I'm all about the Horus Heresy myself. But say you had a demo game and you want to get some miniatures, and Christmas is around the corner, so those Battle Force boxes might look something that you would want to get into. Now, that's actually, I'm not saying that you shouldn't get one. Actually, they look pretty neat. Or to start collecting ones, especially the recruit box. In fact, you can see a couple, well, you can't see on the cam maybe, a couple of the recruit edition miniatures on the background. Good choice. But first things first, what I would recommend anyone to do who wants to get into the hobby: get a single box of miniatures of the race that you like. Kind of easier with the Space Marines, so I have the Mark III set here. And first things first, so to get in cheap, you get this, you get some glue, and you first assemble them, and then you paint them. Actually, well, you might want to skip the painting part if you're not into that immediately, but anyway, so you get a hand on assembling and potentially painting these things, and then what I recommend to do is take what you have and build a kill team out of it. There's an app for the phone called Battle Scribe that allows you to build a list, just something for Kill Team essentially is like a game for a small skirmish games where you have a less than a squad essentially fighting around. And well, let's just say with the Space Marines it's far easier than with other races. But I'd say just have a box of regular infantry. Use Battle Scribe to make a list for the Kill Team and have a match. So that way you get a more hang on the game and what do you call it? You get an idea how your race actually plays. The rules are different from the large battles, but you get a hang of generally how things work. Like some things are different, but generally speaking, you get the rough idea how to do. You get the stats, you get the whatever. You know, general gist of it. Once you get a hang of one rules, it's easier to move on to the other rules. So Kill Team, especially with the local club, you could ask if somebody could play Kill Team for you and teach it for you before you buy any rule books or anything like that. And actually, I have assembled my Kill Team here, just to give you a reference that, you know, this one box contained 10 Space Marines, and these 7 here are my Kill Team. So that's how I got back into my hobby. I got this scene back by just purchasing this one box, and I made my Kill Team from what I had in the box. So we have a heavy weapon specialist, sniper, a melee specialist, just a regular dude with the melee weapon, regular bolter guy, and my leader. So just like that, that's how you can get easily a hobby without spending hundreds, well, a lot of money, because these are pretty expensive. So, okay, that's cool. So if you liked what you see, then you can go forth from there. It's far easier to build from that. So that's how I would recommend how you would kind of get slowly into the hobby. Not saying that you can't or shouldn't buy the boxes when you get a chance, but this is like a surefire way to get into the hobby. And you know, you probably did. If you didn't like it, you didn't probably spend that much anyway. Now, to go more into, so that's kind of a gist of it, how you would get into. And next, I want to explain some things because well, just by looking at the back of this box, you may noticed that there's these lot of color. There's these color things for all the races, and you know, painting is a big part of this. And when you go to look like an online guide for how to paint specific army, they usually have a list of like 20 different paints for you to use. And so we're gonna go down a little bit, list what are the universal colors that you should get, along with the, you know, the main colors that you want. Let's say if you want the ultramarines, in this particular picture, the base colors that you want is some sort of blue, looks like gold or bronze, and everything else is just optional. So we're gonna go through some universal colors. We're also gonna go through some of the tools that you want to be using with these, and also how to transport your miniatures. You don't need to get like a fancy bag looking thing, and you know, just to go show that you can save a lot of money by, you know, how to get properly started. So first things first, let's start with the hobby tools that you might need for the assembling. The one thing that I'd say is a must-have are these clippers. Doesn't matter what brand they are. These happen to be Citadel ones. I just happen to like the way they look, and these being pretty nifty. Don't use them for anything other than the resin and the plastic. Let's just say I may have ruined a pair of clippers in the past by using them for something that they were not intended for. So you know, these will help you to get the miniatures cleanly out of the sprue, and you normally would want to use hobby tool to clean up the spot where it was attached to the sprue. But if you don't want to spend some money, I mean, if you want to save some money, you can use the blade on this to lightly scalp the clean up the edge a bit. So you don't need a hobby knife, although I strongly recommend getting one. Then let's move on to brushes. Now, a lot of people, well, this is not going to be a painting tutorial, but I'm going to give you a gist of it. These are kind of my main 3 brushes that I use, although let me explain a little bit. So, to move on from here, focus, damn you. So, as you can see, we have three different size brushes. I guess I'll just hold it there. I got the one large one. This is for to quickly base coat, or if I need to paint something quickly and cover large areas, I just use the large one. So I could say these two are specialist brushes, and this is for 95% of the work is done with this brush. These two are just cheap synthetic brushes I found from some store. And if you're on the Citadel of the store and you're looking for the brushes, this is slightly bigger than your average base coat brush. So this base coating, let's just say it's a base coating brush, gets 95% of the job done, and most of the time you should be using this, unless you want to cover a lot of space and quickly maybe paint that paint the blue that you saw on the ultramarines or something else. You want a big brush that you can quickly go with. You should, however, check painting tutorials how to load the brush properly so you don't get too well, maybe I'll do a tutorial later. I'm not an expert painter, but basically don't have it too thick of a coat. And then a lot of people, a mistake that I have made myself, is we move on to the tiny one, is that, since we are painting, can we even get to see it proper? Doesn't seem to focus. Anyway, the point is that a lot of people make the mistake, since you're painting small things, you would use the tiny brush. I made this mistake myself, and I have learned from it. That's why I use 95% of the time this one. These tiny brushes, because you are painting tiny miniatures, but the problem is, especially with the Citadel paints, or whatever, the acrylic paints in general, if you don't thin them down, they are gonna dry up on this brush, and it's not gonna be spreading on the model evenly, and you're kind of not getting anywhere with it. So unless I have really tiny details, that's what this specialist brush is for. So something like eyes maybe, but generally speaking, or freehanding Legion symbols or numbers for the model, this is what that is for. Everything else, trims, all the other details, is going with this one, and that's what I recommend you do. So technically speaking, you maybe don't need a large one, you would just need two of these, and I would actually drop this one out, so you just need one brush. But if you want to get more, I'd say this is the Magic 3 combo, and most of the time, these two are just going to be waiting for their specialist tasks, and you will be using this one for the most of the work. And you should do that, because it will teach you the proper painting techniques, so to say. So don't be fooled by the size of the brush. In fact, I have been practicing myself trying to use the larger brushes more rather than the small ones, and only save the small ones for very specific jobs. So, I'm practicing that because I'm starting to get a hang of it, actually, how to properly load a brush and get a paint evenly. So rather than going for the small one, which is like you would think that since you're painting something so small you need a small brush, it actually goes the other way around. And then, well, now that we have our brushes selected, you don't want too many of these. I mean, you might want to have some extra just in case, but any cheap brush will do. It doesn't need to be a Citadel brush or whatever, or the Army Painter or whatever this thing is. Yeah, this happens to be an Army Painter brush, actually. Then we move on to the universal paints. Now, these don't need to be a Citadel ones. These are just something that I found handy. Is that you kind of have the chapter colors, whatever they happen to be, and then you have terrible lighting, but I'll try to explain. This is actually a bronze color, but it's trying to represent the color gold. You want something that is shiny gold. Well, at least on the Space Marines. If you're playing Space Marines, you want gold. You want something silver or metallic. Then you want some black and white. These four are kind of a must-have colors. They have unlimited uses. And then you want something more like, I find red. I find this is a must-have color. And alternatively, you can also have blue. But like, if you really just want to get as little paint as possible, I mean, technically you don't even need these. I'm just saying that if you want to get extra pots and you're wondering what color should you get, these ones are universal. So is the red in my book. And yeah, as you can see, mostly my miniatures, the Iron Warriors. I'll probably add some pictures. They mostly consist just essentially a metal color. Then we got some yellow, we got bronze, and then the various other colors, black, yeah, whatever happens to be needed. And I can actually show you that I have a lot more colors in my paint collection, but they all have their various uses. But you don't need all these colors until you know what you are essentially doing or what you need. What you have here is kind of the, again, terrible lighting, but hey, let's hope that you can see them. So we got the gold, silver, white, black, and red, and I guess blue could help also, especially if you're going for plasma colors. Not saying you can't make red plasma. In fact, probably chaos players want to make red plasma. So these are the universal colors. By the way, red because of blood, I guess so. So, on top of your chapter colors, I recommend getting these. You don't have to, but especially the black and white and maybe the silver. Those are the universal colors that you want to start with because they add a lot to your miniature just by having those. Trust me, it sounds like, well, I'm not going to be using any black or white. Well, the black one actually. The white one is like, oh, I'm not going to be using that. And turns out I use it all the time. Well, most of the time. You never know until you actually need it and you realize, oh, hey, I actually could use some white for this. Then we move on to two shades that are... Also, the paints don't need to be Citadel. They can be just any brand. That's why I didn't mention them. These happen to be Citadel. I don't have any problems with Citadel paint. You can use whatever you want. I got a couple of Vallejo paints. Most of them are Citadel, but yeah, doesn't matter so long as they get the job done. Then we got two shades, and these are kind of these just colored water essentially, and you don't even need to get the official shades, but you got the null on, which will make everything darker. It's essentially coats the whole thing black. So with this you can just make everything look darker. You can make everything look dirty, stuff like that. That's what I use it for. All these miniatures get entirely coated by this thing at the end. Once I'm done painting them proper, this is what they get painted with fully. They just drench in this thing, the null. And then another one is Athrax Earthshade, and this is more of a brown. This tints your stuff brown. So, you know, if you have the black one, if you want to pick one, go for the Nalo. I'd say that's better. But what this one does is it brings out all the gold colors. What people like to do is they use this Athrax Earthshade for the gold and the bronze colors to make them more pronounced, I guess. I'm not sure what the proper term is. So this is what they use for, and the Nile oil they use for the silver and other stuff. I just use it for everything because it works well. But that's their most common use, and it depends what you use it for. I use the Earthshade for going the legs and all the seams of the armor and just make it look oily after I have base coated it well. So when they are assembled, I give them a silver or a metallic coat with prime, and then I go around and make them look dirty with this. Just the edges of it, so it gives more variety to the whole miniature. So that's what I use it for, and those two are constantly being used, and so I recommend having them. And so something to keep in mind, they will color. Actually, I have a couple of apothecaries here, so just to give you an idea. Well, you can't see it then, but his cloak. Yeah, you can't see it. His cloak used to be white, or he's mostly white, but he's been washed with black, so it looks very dirty. All the white color. So yeah. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the paints. So aside from your chapter colors, these are the paints that you might want to look into adding to your collection at the beginning. In fact, I'd say The Citadel start painting sets are actually pretty good, especially I wanted to get the Primaris Assault Marines box because the colors that were in that box are more or less something that I universally use for all my models here, excluding the blue, but basically the colors that I don't use all the time is just more adding to my collection that I can play around with later. So I can't say much for the Necron one, because those were some very specific colors, but the ones in the Primaris Assault start painting thing are, in my book, really good. Especially, they fit my purposes perfectly. So there's that. And there's a different kits, so have a look, see what they have in them. Usually the colors are pretty good, especially if it contains these. It's usually pretty good. Everything else is a bonus. So there you go. We have paints, we have the brushes, we have the tools to start with, and well, now you just need a box of miniatures. So I recommend starting it small, to get a hang of things, and then move on to bigger ones, and eventually you end up spending all your savings into your plastic crack, or in my case, most of it is resin. Okay, as it turns out, I did forget something, and that is painting related. You're gonna need a wet palette. So what do you have here? It's just a tub, a slim tub, and this is gonna help you. This is gonna be like a magic trick for your painting, because like I said about the brush, if you have the tiny one, the paint will dry on it, without a doubt. So what you want to do, the same happens also where you put that paint, and you want to extend the time that it actually is usable, because the paint is not cheap for these miniatures. So what you have here is you take something like a plastic tub like this, you put some paper towels at the bottom, and you make it moist by just adding water, a lot of it, so it's really, really moist. It doesn't need to be floating on the water, it just needs to be very moist. Then you take like a wax paper, baking paper, whatever you put on the plates in the oven, when you're cooking stuff in the oven. I don't know the name of it, but you get the idea. It's like this usually brown or white color, kind of, making sure that the stuff doesn't stick to your plates in the oven. So you take some of that baking paper and put it on top of the wet paper towel, and what you have created essentially is a wet palette. The general gist of it. You might want to have some few drops of water on top of the baking paper. There are some baking papers, or the wax papers, some of them work better than the others. I don't know the details of it, but basically what's happening is that all that moisture is getting sort of through, I guess, condensation, or some of that water is bleeding through into the paint, and it stays. I'm just talking out of my ass, but basically, the paint stays usable for far longer if you use a wet palette. And let's just say I used to do it, so I would take a blob of paint and just pull it on the paper towel and just use that. And I did get things done, but it was terrible. So this is, again, one of those tools that you want to be doing, but you don't need to buy it. You can just make it at home with no extra cost. Eventually, I have a small, actual, proper wet palette. It actually ended up being too small. It's slightly larger than this, but it ended up being too small for my purposes, and now my fiancée, whose death card has actually stolen, so I'm gonna be giving it to her, and instead I'm getting the larger one for myself. So, but that's after I have painted all these guys, so it's not something you should be focusing on right off the bat. It just, these edges are too tall for my taste, and yeah, I wanted something better. But this one has been my trusty companion for a really long time, so this is something that you should definitely use. It helps you in the long run, and if you put just a little bit on top of it, you can use the paints next day. At least that's what I do. I keep using them way too long, people say that it's gonna, the paint should stay proper for like 6 hours or something like that with the paper. This method. No, I use them day after day. I have kind of diluted my paints maybe too much. I have destroyed them to some extent. So, I'm not the smartest tool in the box, but hey, it gets the job done. So if you want to be stingy like me when you don't got any money, you gotta make do what you have. So this is one of those tools that you don't need to spend any money. You already have it technically. So yeah, moving on next topic, whatever that is. More money saving tips for the painting or tools in general is, a lot of people like to get a Citadel painting handle or painting handle in general. This right here is my first painting handle. It just has a brush attached. It's just blue tack on top of the whatever this really glossy paint that I used for some cosplay armor back in the day when I was painting some camo on the cosplay armor. I wouldn't use this paint for the miniatures. But all this is just blue tack on the top, attach the miniature there, and I painted that. I don't need fancy painting handles. So that's one thing you can save money on. Well, another thing people like to do is have these, the wine bottle corks, the wine bottle caps, the cork, or whatever it's called, and just attach the miniature with a pin, or what I like to do is I have the pin-wise drill. And if you want to spend money, one handy tool is this one. It's kind of hard to make at home, but it's essentially just a hand drill that you can just keep spinning and it drills. So what I like to do as a painting handle thing, I have a couple of the wine bottle corks. I screw this like a 1mm drill bit into one of the legs, just under the let's say elbow here. Just drill it there and detach the drill bit and attach it to the cork instead. It's a terrible idea. You want to use actual pins for that, but I'm lazy. I don't have any pins, so that's what I do every now and then. This is for some pieces. I don't do it for all the miniatures, but sometimes when I if I don't want to use blue tack, because sometimes they just refuse to stick to this stuff for whatever is in the miniatures. And so this one gives me some extra height because I have drilled into the leg and attached to the cork. So those corks are one idea. This is something that I come up with. Some people just do the same, but they don't use the actual drill bits for that. So this is a handy tool. I like to drill all the holes that you have on the miniatures, like the barrels of the guns or the exhaust ports on the vehicles and stuff like that. So this was a lifesaver for me. Also, if you're going to magnetize your miniatures, you're going to need one of these. And it doesn't really have that many options for the, it doesn't need to be, this is Citadel brand, you don't need to get a Citadel one, but this one has for a smaller, I don't know, from 1mm to something like 2.5mm maybe comes with it. I'm not entirely sure, but I have a drill bits kit for all the larger ones, I guess the Dreadnought on the corner here. It's like a 5mm wide, 1mm thick a magnet on his arms, so I can swap them out. So for that one, I can't use this one. I just use the drill bit itself, and luckily the resin has been soft enough for me to drill. So if you want to use magnets, you're gonna need one of these, or maybe get a third-party one, or actual pin-wise, whatever the pin drills. Because depending on the size of the magnets, like the larger ones, well, they're gonna fit into this one. Don't use power tools, that's just gonna ruin everything. But yeah, some handy dandy tools. Whatever I do next? Wait a minute, I forgot something, and it was how to transport these miniatures. So you might be tempted to get yourself right off the bat, you don't want to be spending so much money or the utensil. That's why, I mention to start it small, because, when you got stuff like this, these are quite rather expensive. So when you got the
the clipper. You want to spend the money where it matters, like the glue. Well, yeah, we can get something else than the Games Workshop glue, or the Citadel granite, especially the just look into it. Especially the super glue. Don't get the Citadel one; it's terrible. There's a reason why the old Abaddon model never had hands that stuck in the model. Anyway, so in the beginning you're going to be spending a lot of money for something like the clippers, the brushes, the paints, and the miniatures. There's a lot of things that actually cost things. Rules, for instance. Well, you can get a long way by just asking the other guys, like, hey, could you teach me? Is it okay if I don't have the rule book? So, stuff like that. The Battle Scribe actually has a lot of, like, it has most of the rules for the units. It just doesn't have the basic rules for the game that you need to, like, how many inches does this move, or, speaking of some tools, if you want to play at home, you're gonna need some dices. You're gonna need a measurement tape that has inches on it, stuff like that. So that's gonna be adding the cost. So when you start the hobby, you don't want to be spending, like, you're looking at these carry cases, the big expensive carry cases, like, yeah, I'm gonna need one of those. No, you're gonna need all the basic stuff first. So going back to the carry case, you can say cut corners in a lot of places. For instance, this is the carry case for my kill team. You can see how many. You already saw all my miniatures here. So I still use this as a carry case for my kill team. What I just do is I take some paper towels and put some in, fold it down to the bottom, put a couple kill team guys on it, fold another paper towel on top of them, and have another layer of dudes just lying around on it so they don't get damaged while they don't move around while they're in this box. And this is sufficient to getting my kill team around. So at the start, all you need is something like this. You probably have one at home. If you don't, these are really expensive ones to get. And who knows, you can store some food in them. And later down the line, when you have a bigger army, I had, if I wanted to show off my Sikaran battle tank that was on the lower shelf that you probably saw briefly, I just took the bigger lunchbox that we had and used the same method, having all the miniatures in it. So, yeah, that's quickly touching upon the whole transportation. So, remember, when you are getting the hobby, don't try to get all these extra stuff. Try to focus on what do you actually need in the beginning. Carry case is not the first thing. You're gonna need get the proper tools first to get everything. Well, actually, you can make the first miniatures without any tools. Really, when I made my first miniatures, I didn't even use scissors. I kind of just spun. Some pieces you can't really spun out of the sprue, but usually they were attached in 2 points. I would snap the third point, like the backpacks, and then just keep rotating the piece, but sometimes that left a really ugly mark to the backpacks and stuff like that. So, clippers, hobby knife, stuff like that. That's what you want to be spending on money, not this expensive carry cases. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, or this whole video, is because a friend of mine, or a member of a community in a particular game, kind of got interested into the Warhammer, and he wants to start with one of his races, whatever that is. Let's leave that to a mystery. And he kind of, he got excited. He started looking at stuff, and he was like already getting a carry case before he even has some miniatures. So start one thing at a time. Get the tools, get the brushes, get the paints, get the box. Start assembling them. I didn't mean this box when I said I meant the... Well, I don't have the Mark III Marine box with me, okay? I just put it somewhere. It's over there, like really far away. I'm not picking it up. So, get your box of miniatures, get your hands dirty, and then use whatever you happen to have at the kitchen or something like that. Well, speaking of which, if you want to play at home and you happen to have the rules, and you have the dices, you got the measurements, but you don't have the terrain, well, I mean, it works as a building for a line of sight, and technically you can jump on top of it, so Bob's your uncle. Speaking of terrain, something like a hobby knife, I'm gonna make another video on how to make, You know, so you start. I want to, you know, just cardboard and hot glue gets you far, but that's gonna be another video. I'm gonna, you know, make a video for, you know, let's say you actually get past all of this. You have the wherever the transport box went, doesn't matter. No miniatures were harmed in that. So once you have done all that, then you might be interested. Is like, okay, then you start investing on the terrain because you don't want to play with the, you know, just books and CD covers and whatever as the terrain. You want actual decent looking terrain. So that's going to be a video in future to show you how to get that started and the minimalistic essential tools that get you really far. This thing doesn't require much. Like, yeah, I mean, there's some things that you gotta invest to, and those tools will take you far and are kind of, again, universal for the hobby. So that's going to be another video. I'm not going to talk about that too much. So, welcome to the hobby. I hope I didn't forget something. Bye!